So first we did was that when we were trying to study exports and imports, we tried to benchmark what India is exporting with what the world is importing. And are we exporting the right things? Are we producing the right things as compared to what the world is doing? Or are we on a different trajectory? And when we started benchmarking the Indian exports and Indian imports against world export and world imports, we found that India is doing extraordinarily well in some sectors. One by accident, that is processed petroleum products. That is because of two large refineries which came up on the west coast. But most of our specialized export business was gems and jewelry, where our share, which is about a 17 to 18% share in our total exports. Our share in the world exports is also very high, much higher than our share in our exports. Our exports have been doing well the last 10-15 years, and at a CGR of 20%, as I've been saying all the way. And their total share is about 1.6 and 1.7. This is 4 to 5 times, 6 times more than what our share in total exports is. Textiles as a whole was another area. It's about 7% in the world exports and about, I think, another 9, 10 or 12% in our exports. We found there was a gap in a thing called technology imports, technology products and capital goods. The world was importing 25% of its, 25% of the international trade is in terms of these technology products. As a percentage of Indian imports also is 25%. As a percentage of Indian exports is only 7% or 8%. The internal CAGR is very high, 27%. The companies in that were doing good, but number of companies were not coming in. That started us to think, why is this happening? Is it because of we don't have those capacities? But if you look at what the setup is, the education setup, our universities, our engineering colleges are among the best in the world. It's not that we are, and if you say that we are not as good as USA, but we are definitely as good as those in Southeast Asia, as good as in China. The talent which is there is not getting reflected in the manufacturing production which is taking place. If you see how the national economy has been growing, the total share of manufacturing has been stagnant around 15%. In terms of capital formation, it's about 32% of 32 to 40 it was the gross capital formation. It went up from 90s to 2008, it touched a peak, stagnated there for some time, now it's come down. It's come down to about 35, 36. Within the gross capital formation, people were talking that we have a very high capital formation. The capital output ratio is a low at 4, as against 6 in other countries. So the growth impact is higher. And 8-9% growth was coming. And people were also talking at the same time that jobless growth is happening. The concept of jobless growth was a part of a debate which was taking place a couple of years back. If you see the capital formation, only 32% of the gross capital formation is in manufacturing. That is only 1/3. Rest of it is in the non-manufacturing. If you see the employment indices, the organized sector employment, when we there, is around 28, 29 million. And has remained there at 28, 29 million plus minus something for the number of years. Every year we are adding 10 million to our population in the working force. This is all what published hearsay figures which everyone keeps talking about. Today also there was a news item that the employment creation which has been issued by the Department of Labour. In the peak was 1 million, came down to 900, now is about 400, 500,000, 600,000. When we are adding 10 million people, now why is all that happening? So first study which we did as a benchmarking, international benchmarking, was in this SME definition, and we have been talking about it, how our definitions are archaic compared to what it is there in China or Southeast Asia, Europe and elsewhere. Europe it is 50 million euro, in US it is, and in Southeast Asia it's about 7 to 8, $10 million. Here it is about 1.5 or 1.8, 10 crores. With all these countries we are having FTAs, FTAs, WTO agreements. Now, we are going into a globalized world where everyone is free to trade, and we are therefore able to import, but we are not able to export because we are not producing, and people want, preferences have changed. You see the consumption demand pattern, cell phones you talked about. Everyone has got either a cell phone or white goods or electronic goods. If you see how the electronic goods industry is simplistic, white good industries, 80s, the brands which were there were all Indian brands. In Tamil Nadu it was Dianora, in North India they were there, in the white goods also they were there. Today you see the brand names. None of those industries have gone bankrupt. They've all voted with their feet. They've all become big in their own ways, but not in manufacturing. So the next item we thought when we studied, and this was a clue which was given by Economic Survey, and Kaushik Pasan was talking about that labor, is in the planning commission also. When they were talking about labor, they said labor laws need to be defined and need to be modernized. But no one was talking about specifics, what is the specific thing. So I think this is not a way of argumenting, what labor law, what are the labor laws? As a banker, I need to know what are the things which are. So I commissioned these people to do a study. And Renuka and Pratham have been working, they have taken about a year plus to do it. It was not such an easy task. And we have an in-house legal team, and they drew on that, on how to parameterize it on that. So they have studied about 20 countries, and 15 parameters have been laid out. When they showed it to me, one thing came as a big surprise. Of the 15 parameters, about 10, 12, 13 parameters, there's not much difference. And the countries we have chosen are France, USA, UK, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, China, Russia, everywhere. The 20 is also BRICS, all the BRICS, all the neighbors. 12 parameters, there's not much. Only on 3 parameters there are differences. They will talk about in detail in that. I don't want to pre-anticipate. And those 3 are actually what constitutes the unfriendly regime what people keep talking about. And that also, when we went deeper, we found that a strange thing had happened, that the factory employment figures, when we said that, I hope you're giving those figures, the benchmarking. Average Indian factory employment is about 74. And the technology level here is not high tech, as I mentioned, the big thing is medium tech to tech. In China, it is about twice ours. In Indonesia and other places, it's 1.5 times ours. Wage rate increase. I was in China for 2 years. In my time only, I saw how the wages were going up. There are no protections per se except salary protection. When you engage as a woofie, I was there. We had this annual contract because state 1 month notice and you can get this over there. And when I went there in 2005, when we recruited, I was a greenfield start of a commercial bank. And I was paying about 2,100, 2,200 yuan for entry level. And that time it meant about 10,000. So it was broadly comparable to what it is in India. When I left, the entry level had gone to 3,000 odd RMB. And persons who had completed 1 year were at 3,500 or 3,700. They had a 1,500 yuan jump because if we didn't give it, they went elsewhere. What China did was to increase the amount of companies which came in hugely, so there was a competition for labor. The total amount of labor employment which took place in India, the organized sector is 29 million. There was about 200, 300 million. So if you see how the wage rates in China have gone up, the CAGR from 1999 to today is about 15% in nominal wages and 12% in real wages. Today, unskilled, quasi-skilled person at a textile, say a textile factory that support new person gets a this thing of 3,200 RMB as an induction point wage. Young girls, young boys, fresh out of say 3,200 RMB. If you see what RMB is, when I was there, it was 8.27 to a dollar, and India was 43 to a dollar. It was average was 5. Today it is 6.13 to a dollar or something. We are at 60. It's 10 to a dollar. 10 times. 10, 1 RMB is 10. That means the induction level wage is 30,000 rupees compared to what it is in India, and you think you know what I should do. People say that cost of labor is something which is good, it's low here. That is when the point of departure came, when our structured studies took place. We started studying these and we are now going to release a report on France. You know, aluminium and steel, we pride ourselves that we've got huge coal bases, huge iron mines, huge aluminium. We are the largest producers of aluminium, primary aluminium and iron steel. Now, apart from China, you know. The country called France. How much aluminium does it produce internally? No steel, no iron ores, no coal mines. It's not a petroleum rich. Their exports of aluminium is multiples of us. Their production of steel is multiples of us. Why? They import the aluminium from us. Processed production is what they export. Wage rate there is 3 to 4 times our wage rate, maybe 5 times our wage rate. Power there is 3 to 4 times our power rate. We have documented that also. I think you released it somewhere else in some other. Yet they're able to export. And it's not a, what do you call it, high fat type of thing. It's a country which is not, in the press you see it as inflexible labors. Yet they are able to do that. That is why the study is being this over there. And this study, if you, when we went detailed, this thing about Industrial Dispute Acts came in, or how this is over there. And intriguing development also taking place, that also they talk about the Industrial Dispute Act in late 18th, single that thing, which also could be the conflict of all this. What has happened is, we have got a sector where people are doing well. The national economy is growing at 7%, it's now 5%, but it is growing 7-8%. People are becoming well off, and people are voting with their feet. Most of the investments, all said and done, is going into non-manufacturing. All the growth which is there, hardcore manufacturing companies, which are reputable manufacturing companies such as Tata's, L&T's, Mahindra's, Godrej. You see what do they have now? Reality divisions, big reality divisions. You see how when I talked about 32% and 66%, 66% of the gross level is going into the informal sector. People are voting with their feet of not going into the organized sector or manufacturing this thing. They're going into the reality sector or the services sector, which is non-organized. Or people are voting with their feet and going outside. So our imports are going up because our domestic production is not growing. Bonds are growing. Money creation is taking place because growth is there. I mean, if you have a working force going up, if you have trained for, and we produce 4 lakh engineers every year now and 2 lakh MBAs, in fact, there will be a lot. But the growth is going in a direction which is what you call not great. Because as a development bank, I also work in the non-formal sector. I've been traveling, we have this great program and we have signed this, and I've been working with a lot of these NGOs. And I've traveled quite a bit in the areas which are away from the metro cities. Everywhere I've been, I've seen these families with very bright-eyed youngsters. Their parents have slogged over the period to get them to school and get them to college. And it's a pride of it. A lot of NGOs are working there. A lot of organizations are working there. Education, amount of investment which the country is making. When these kids grow up and so much money has been spent by the families on them, what happens to them? If they don't get organized sector, means what? China, there is no organized sector or unorganized sector because there is no input. But the China, the wage rates are going up, so it doesn't matter whether it's organized or not. And the statistics are that 300 million is what they show is published manufacturing employment. Our published manufacturing organized sector is about 28, 29 million. So these are thought-provoking things by which you, as a backdrop, you must keep when you're looking at the study. And I will not talk about the study because I will be upstaging what my people have done. And a structured presentation will be made up and I'll wait for it. But thank you very much for coming, because we are very hesitant in, who will listen to us as a non-labor knowledge institution talk about labor. I mean, it's slightly, when a non-banker talks about banking, one certainly who. And I would like to thank MCCI once again for having organized this and for such a galaxy of dignitaries to listen to us. Thank you very much. It's a great honor for us and we feel very privileged. Thank you very much.